Hello, and welcome to the AMA for February 2023. Here are the questions my patrons asked for this month. If you'd like to ask a question for one of these AMAs, please consider supporting me over on my Patreon. Link in the description. Moving on to the first set of questions from Aquasun. The first question is, comparing apples and oranges, is it really such a bad thing? For me, it depends, like most things. If the topic is more focused on a broad look at the fruits in question and their qualities, in terms of fruits, then yeah, that makes sense because they're both fruits. But if someone's trying to say that like oranges are worse than apples because their skin is way tougher and you have to like break through it and stuff, that's where it's like, yeah, it's an orange. I think rather than being a good or bad thing, the concept of comparing them, apples and oranges that is more hearkening to the fact that while some things can have overarching similarities, trying to take that similarity as both things needing to be the same or comparable on all aspects is a foolish thing to do. Basically, please focus on the topic at hand rather than this barely relevant thing. It reminds me of the phrase, judging a fish by its ability to climb a tree. A fish is an animal, yes, and many animals can climb trees, but a fish isn't one of them. And trying to like talk about that just kind of leads to nowhere. So I think that's my look on the phrase apples and oranges. The next question is, how long is too long for a book series? For me, it depends on the content. Like if the story is still moving along and has new things to say and like about its themes and such, then as far as I'm concerned, go nuts and like keep going. That said, I find that in terms of like books and novels, that 3 is typically the sweet spot. But I don't read like novels and books as much, so I don't know. Meanwhile, say something like a manga, 3 would be like too little, I would think, unless it was meant to be like a shorter series, but I tend to like longer stuff. The next question from Aquasun is philosophical question. What do you think of the experience machine / pleasure machine thought experiment? Would you choose to enter or not enter the machine? Why or why not? My gut answer before I read the article was no, and after reading more on it, my answer was still no. Life is a combination of ups and downs, and trying to avoid anything and everything unpleasurable or uncomfortable is super naive and would, in my opinion, lessen the pleasure that's there. Not to mention, some of the greatest pleasures come after unpleasurable things. Working hard to hone your craft and then making something you're proud of, that satisfaction is unreal and would be completely unmatched in a machine where you could skip to the end result without any hard work, or like beating a hard video game boss, stuff like that. Part of it is like overcoming a difficult task, right? So I guess another way to look at it is like, if happiness and pleasure become the default that's always there, it'd be far too easy to be complacent with it and not appreciate it. Take breathing, for example. Until you're in a situation where it's hard to breathe, you don't really think about it or appreciate it. I feel like that machine would be the same way. The last question from Aquasun is, how do you come up with names for your original characters? For original characters in bigger works, I tend to use a site called, it's called Aussie Things, that has a baby name section. I tend to like that site because there's a lot of names available, all organized by letter, and they have a table with the name, meaning, pronunciation, which is usually, unfortunately, blank, derivations? I wrote this down, but I on the spelling and the origin. The amount of info makes me feel a bit more secure in that the names are, like, more legit, I suppose. Like, there could still be mistakes, but the fact that there's that much, especially the variations, that's the word I was looking for. That really helps it feel more like in line with actual names. Anyway, sometimes I'll have a meaning in mind or a letter, so I comb through those options trying to find ones I like. If I find multiple, I'll make a list and then I'll choose from those later. The next set of questions comes from Hannah Page. The first one being, what's your favorite Fire Emblem class? I'll be honest, I don't really play that much Fire Emblem, so I'd have to go with like the Dragon Riders are really neat. Also, the mounted units, basically in general, like horses, Pegasi, they're all really neat. Also moving fast. Next question. is, what is your favorite breakfast? I tend to lean more towards like pancakes and sausage with sunny side up eggs as like a basic one. But there is a breakfast place I really like that has like a French toast sandwich with eggs and cheese and bacon and fruit on the side. It's like my favorite thing. It's the perfect combination of sweet and savory. Next question, Mario or Luigi? Who do you like best? Luigi. His lovable coward nature is so endearing. Next question is, got any manga book recommendations? As a general recommendation, Spy X Family has been really great so far. I still have to actually pick up the first 2 volumes. They were missing when I picked up like the first 8 or so. I got like a bunch of gift cards for the bookstore, and I was so sad they didn't have the first 2. But I basically knew the beginning part already, so that was okay. The last question from Hannah is, have you ever heard of the award-winning MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV with the free trial that goes up to level 60 and includes the heavensward expansion with no limits on playtime? Perhaps. The last set of questions comes from Gaku. The first being, what do you think about the holiday of Groundhog's Day? Honestly, I forget about it most of the time. It is cute though, a little whimsical too. How long will winter be? Asked that groundhog. Next question, what's the most you'd pay for DLC for a game? Okay, I'm a weird person who usually judges how much to pay based on how much enjoyment I think I can get out of the game and its quality. So if a game costs $40, I'm usually hoping to get at least 40 hours of entertainment out of it, or at least a really good 20-hour experience. When it starts going past 50, I hesitate a bit more, if only because I don't have a lot of disposable income. So I either have to really want the thing or know that like it's really worth it, right? So if I had more money, then honestly it could be anything, just depending on the quality. But yeah, it has to at least kind of meet that like $1 per hour or like $2 per hour sort of thing for it to be like, okay, that's a good base. The last question from Gaku, and the last question for this month overall, is what gave you the idea to make coloring pages on Patreon? There's actually a few reasons. Firstly, I realized I had a lot of line art of neat pieces just kind of laying around that could make for a nice and easy reward to share with people. Secondly, I know that for me, coloring is my favorite step, so I was like, whoa, maybe other people also really like coloring the most and don't really like lines. I could help people do that, just have the coloring and not worry about the lines. And then there's also that I remembered coloring contests in the grocery and general stores in my youth, and like I remember those so fondly, where you'd see them all like posted up in the windows, right? And it was just really fun. And lastly, I saw that Miss Cianella had coloring pages as a reward on her Patreon, and that seemed really cool, so I kind of followed suit. And that is all for the questions for this month. So we're going to move over to the end screen here. As you can see, my lovely patrons are scrolling across the screen here. You can see their NPCs that are put in comics or used for other things if I'm not doing comics that month. There are also some links in the descriptions that some of the higher tiered patrons have wanted to share. As always, too, the questions featured in these videos are from patrons, so if you want to ask any patron can ask them, right from $1 up. So if you want to pledge, you can do that. But yeah, as always, I'm always super thankful for anybody that pledges and watches these videos. It really means a lot to me. It helps me, get groceries and stuff, so that's always nice. But yeah, I will see you guys after next month. Or, well, during the end of next month, this month really, for the next set of questions. Bye!